Assassin's Promise by Thomas Woodward. Chapter 100. Eve met us, garbed in an odd uniform. There were concentric circles that banded around each of the wide-robed sleeves. Each band held a different color. Yellows, golds, blues, and deep browns flowed across the stitches of the fine weave. The fabric clung tight to her skin along the bodice, accentuating her curves. It was light and soft, but surprisingly flexible as she moved to meet us. Her honey-gold tresses hung down in riotous waves. Eve had to brush them aside, lest they cover her eyes. A single long braid hung down her back. It was cunningly woven, and reflected the light like a long rivulet of beaten gold. Her expression was unsteady and shy. This was not the Eve I had met more than a day ago. She seemed more reserved, quiet. Looking downwards, she crossed the final stretch over the cool grasses to where we sat, next to the branches of the strange fruit-bearing trees. "It is time. Let us go." Her voice was hushed and low. "Eve?" I held my hand out to her, suddenly afraid to touch her after our parting. With cool reserve, she slowly met her hand in mine, but did not meet my gaze. I stared back at her, unsure of how to gauge her reaction. "Take us out of this place, now." Stannon did not hold back his judgment for fear of anyone's feelings. Stannon looked about wildly when he suspected no one to be looking. He carried a tension that was apparent in the shift of his shoulders, in the tightening of his hands on the gauzy bark, before leveraging himself to his feet. Stannon's arm still bled, albeit only faintly now. The dark stain did not seem to bother him in any event. I held myself aloof, unsure of whether to expect an outburst from the older man. Stannon was the same man, wasn't he? I still feared him, but there had been a long span of time that had lessened that fear, shaped it into something more manageable on a small scale. I almost trusted him. Almost. There had been more than one occasion where he could have left me to die. Why had he come back? Was it something so simple as finding another way to secure passage? Or had he come back for me? What purpose did I hold for him? My mind worried about what he had planned for me yet. But he had promised to show me the world. How else could I reach the great cloud city of Kaibar? Stannon and I followed Eve as she wound through the pillars on our path towards the great temple. Was there a stable yard somewhere where they kept mounts? I had not seen a living soul since entering the city proper, days ago. We marched up to the rear of the temple. It was a perfectly circular surface. The polished stone glowed redly in the sun. I had to block my eyes as we approached. Various mirror-like walls created such a glare that it was blinding to look at. We huddled like some strange line of misfits, moving with careful steps, our faculties of sight completely bereft by circumstance. After stumbling into a stone column, my side blazed in pain where I had crashed into it. Giving up all pretense of pride, I crawled on my hands toward the great gate. Never had I seen such a glare. It must be the time of day when the reflection of the sun's rays lined up in unison to create a pillar of light. I smiled to see Stannon crawling on his own hands and knees several feet to my right. I could see that Eve remained standing, moving in small steps with certainty towards the immense doorway. The white light around us was palpable. The complex of mirrors must be such that even in our prostrated positions we could not escape its brilliant glare. Clenching my teeth, eyes shut tight, my hand felt solid metal. I could trace intricate carvings without even opening my eyes. I felt whorls and circular discs that set my mind to curious pondering. "Eve, can you open the way for us?" The brilliant light was never like this before. Why hadn't I noticed it earlier? I realized I had been shouting. I had done so to pull my voice above the waves of sound that flowed around us like 100 tolling bells in chorus. Stannon was huddled on the ground, unable to move in any direction without assistance. "Damn that woman! She tricked us, Eddie," he spat. I could barely hear the rage of his voice above the torrent of sound. I felt a cool hand placed against my shoulder. It cut through the wall of sound immediately, bringing my mind into focus for a moment. Cool, hushed tones reverberated through my body as Eve spoke. "Eddie, I will open the way. Do not be afraid of what you see." With that, I could feel her move away, the garbled sound falling back into place in crashing waves, to replace the calm she had imposed a moment before. An opening. A great turning. Of a wheel? No. The ground seemed to be slowly rotating and shifting beneath us, but when I placed both palms against the flagstones, I could feel no movement. What was happening? "Come now!" Eve shouted. Her voice exploded into our ears, threatening to burst them from the force of the message. "You have but moments! Do not wait, or you will be lost!" With thick coils of fear reaching through me, I moved for all I was worth. The glare pounded me like a demon. As we strode forward, I opened one eye a fraction and saw nothing. True nothing. The absence of reality, as if we stood on a door in the middle of a rotating pool with no end or ceiling. Snapping my eyes shut, I leapt through the doorway, which fell below me even as my course shifted to meet it. I felt sick and a strong desire to empty the contents of my stomach. A chill passed over me, burning through each hair and fiber of my being, and was gone. Tensed, I very slowly opened one eye and met total darkness. A hand greeted mine, gentle and strong. "Eve, is that you?" "Stay close to me, Eddie. We still have far to travel yet." I could hear Eve's relaxed breathing and the sharp intake of breath that could only be Stannon, somewhere a few feet from us in the darkness. I remember this sensation. I could feel the strange pulsing of the walls around us. It felt as if we were inside a great beast. The heat rose from the ground beneath us. After a moment, I heard a scuffling noise, and then a bright reddish glow burst into existence from below. Stannon and Eve were painted in the red light for the space of a heartbeat, before it disappeared once again into darkness. The tiny rocks I remembered stepping on. After exiting the gargantuan cavern, deep within the temple's depths, I remembered the darkness and downward slope that Eve and I had traversed for what seemed like a full span ago. We must have somehow returned to that place instantly. But how? There was true magic at work, I realized, the hairs of my arms standing on end suddenly. Had Eve imparted part of herself, her life essence, to move the great temple? My mind still could not fathom how such a feat could be done. But I had seen things out of nightmare and fantasy, things I never would have believed without seeing them with my own two eyes. I could not trust much of what I had encountered based on my previous life's experience. I chose to accept it as reality, odd and wavering though it may be. "Finish the ritual! By the dark blinded god, I'm going to be sick!" Stannon snapped his arm against the wall of the chamber with a loud clap of sound. A powerful reverberation moved through the floor, and all of us before we tipped from our feet to the hot ground. Moments passed before the cloaked space stabilized again. "Betrayer! If you value your life, you will stay silent. Do not move. You risk all of us with your misguided anger." Her words dripped acid. Eve regarded each of us in turn. Her features softened when she turned to me, reaching tentatively to grip my hand with a quick squeeze. I could barely make out her face. Gone was the luminescence of her eyes. They were different now. They no longer reflected the light. Part of me stung at the loss she must feel after undergoing her transformation. Perhaps it was necessary to draw less attention among my people, but I felt a sadness for her. "Do not threaten me, woman. Your power grows weaker with every passing moment." With apparent grim satisfaction, Stannon let out a laugh, full and genuine. "Oh yes, did you think I would not realize? Surely you took me for a fool. The tables will turn, and when they do, I will decide how generous is appropriate for you in your new lowly standing. You may hold the power now, girl, but do not think for a moment I will forget what you took from me." "What I took from you? Surely you jest, manling. What you took from my people eclipses all. If not for Eddie's words of restraint, you would have been torn limb from limb and buried under the ever-shifting sand. You owe him your life, you wretch." Eve did not give an inch in her defiance against Stannon. Her back was taut, every muscle straining as she delivered her words. I wondered just how far the depths of Stannon's crimes went. I hated being the mediator, but the two of them were liable to kill each other if I did not keep a careful eye. Not that I could do anything. I had no force behind my words. In truth, I wondered why Eve had stayed her hand. "Keep her in line," Stannon almost shouted. My anger flared at his outburst, but I stayed silent. Stannon was a dangerous foe to rile. I swore under my breath as he continued. "Just get us to our destination, out of this god-forsaken desert." Stannon waited for a reply.